This is the third video in this series on how to build a simple 2D platformer. In this tutorial, we will be using the animator and animation inside of the game object of the player to create animations so that the player will be able to run, jump, and idle, and then the animations will show when he does those three actions. Alright, so welcome to the third episode in this series, where we create animations for our player so when he runs around. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go into our Pixel Adventure 1 folder inside of the project folder, inside of the Pixel Adventure 1, we shall go to the assets folder. Inside there we'll go to the main character, and then we'll go into whatever character that you have. I have Mask Dude right now, but you can have whatever character that you like. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to see all of these little animation things. So what we can do right now is we can just go to the idle, and you can see that mine is 32 frames, and then that all of these frames are the idle frames. So what I could do is I'll take this, the first frame, and then I will take all of the other frames, highlight them all, right click, create, and then an animation. And then it'll make an animation, and I'll call new animation. I'll name this idle animation because this is the idling animation for my player. And then this is an animation. We can go into the window, and then animation, and then the animator window. And I have this right here, but if we drag this out right here, and then we make this just a bit bigger, this is where the animator, is where we can put the animations that our player has. So if we drag in the idle animation, it will show up there, but not yet, because we have to make it an actual animation. So if we go back into the window, and we go to animation, and then we go to the animation one, we get this window right here. We can just drag this window back into here. If we have this, once we have this window, you can see that my idle animation is already showing up right here. It's a preview of this idle animation. So if I go into here, I highlight on the player, and then to put this animation on the player, we'll take this idle animation inside of our project folders and then drag it onto the player. And now if we go into the player, you'll see that he has an animator, and then there's controller, and it has a lot of other things that we don't need to worry about right now. But in this preview, right here in this animation window, we can click play, and then you see that our player is idling right now. This is the idle animation for the player. So we can have this animation play when he's not moving or not jumping and things like that. So let's make a run animation. So if we can go back into here, and then we'll open up this run, and then we shall select all of them, right click, create an animation. We can name this animation run. We'll drag this onto the player so that the player has this animation too. And then we can see that if we click play on the run animation for the player, that he can run. So what we'll want to do is we'll see that there's other animations inside here too. There's wall jump, there's hit, and then there's double jump. We're not going to be using those right now because we haven't added them into our game yet. We've just added the run and then the no running, the idling. So what we'll do is we'll go into this animator, we'll go into this little window right here, and then since we're on the player, we can see in here that there is an entry, idle, run, and then another run. We actually only need one run, so we can just delete the other run. And then this is the animation window. This shows what animation is playing and when. You can just drag this little window back into here. Drag that to here for now. So an entry, that means when the game starts. This is basically whenever you click the play button in the editor, or when anybody plays your game when in actually playing the game. So entry, there's a little transition here. These arrows are called transitions. And then from the entry, it goes straight to idling. So that's actually correct. When we start the game, we want the player to just be idling because he won't be jumping or running. And then here's the exit. This is when we stop playing the game. We won't really use that right now because there won't be like an exit animation or anything. So, and then this is the any state. We can add a transition to here where that the any state, this can go to any animation. So if we want to do, we can create a transition from idle to run, because you can run and idle at this. If you're idling and then you click one of the arrow keys, you can start running. So if we go to the idle, we right click it, we can click make transition, and you can see that we can go to the any state, exit, entry, or run. We'll click the run, and you see if we click on this, we can over here in the inspector see all of these little things. We can go down to the settings, and we can set the exit time to 0, set the transition duration to 0, and then has exit time we can just turn off, because we don't really need to have an exit time. That's just like fading in between the animations, and we don't really want that right now. So what we'll need to do is we'll create parameters to see that if the player is moving, then we'll play the run animation. If he's idling, then we'll play the idle animation. So in here, there's the parameters. What we can do is click the plus, and then it asks us for a float, an integer, a boolean, or a trigger. We can do a boolean, and we'll name this is idle, and this is if the player is idling or not. We can add another boolean, and we'll name this is run, and this will be true if the player is running or not. So we can go to this transition right here, and we can make this a bit smaller so we can see the inspector. And then in here it says conditions. What we'll want to do for conditions is create a condition so that if the player is running, then the player should run. So in the conditions, for this transition from idling to running, we want is idle to be false, and then is running to be true. So we can set these little drop downs here to be true and false, because if you're going from idling to running, you won't idle anymore, and if you're going from running to idling, you won't run anymore. So we'll do that transition right now. So we'll right click on run, make transition, and then go to idle. If we go on to this transition, we can set the exit time and transition duration to 0, turn off has exit time, and then in the condition, is idling is equal to true, that'll be true, and then is run is equal to false, because you won't run if you're idling, and you won't idle if you're running. So right now, we have these little parameters right here. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to go into our player movement script, and then in there we'll set the parameters so that the player will idle and run. So inside of our scripts, we can open up the player movement. Alright, so when you go into your code editor, we're going to see our screen like this. This is all of our code that we've done in the past few episodes for the player movement. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to create a new method, a new private void method, and we can name this method animate. This will be the method with all of the code that will be to animate our character. So inside of this, we're first going to check if we are running or not. So we can do if our rigid body 2D dot velocity dot x is not equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, that means we are moving. So we're going to need a reference to our animate. So what we can do is we can get a public animator, and then we can name this animator, because this would just be our animator. So what we can do down in this function, we can do the animator that we just had dot set bool. This is a method that sets the boolean that you've created inside of the animator, like the parameters that we have for whether we're going to do the animations for running or idling. So in the animator set bool, it's going to take two parameters. The first one's going to be a string reference, and the boolean that we're going to want to use is run, but since this is a string reference, you're going to want to make sure that this is spelled exactly the same as the one in your Unity editor. So, and then the second parameter, we're going to set this to true, because isRun is going to be true if we are moving. And then we're going to want to see if we are idling or not. So if our velocity on the x-axis is not equal to 0, that means we're moving. So if we do else, that means we are not moving. So that we will do animator.setBool, and then the boolean we'll do is idle, and we'll set this to true. And then there's a few things we'll want to do, is that if we're moving, we won't be idling, so we can do the animator.setBool, and then we'll set isIdle to false. And then inside of idling, we'll do the animator.setBool, and then we'll set isRunning to false, because if we're idling, then we won't be running. And then once we start moving again, we will play the running animation and stop the idling animation. So when we have this, we're going to want to go up to our update, and then we're going to call this at the top of our update. We're going to call the animate function, so that when we play our game, the player should animate. So when we get back into the Unity editor, we'll go into the player, and then inside of this player movement, it's going to look for the animator. So we'll just take his animator and drag it in, and then we can check inside this animator. We have these two little functions, isRun. We have these two little animations, idle and run, and then we have these two parameters, isIdle and then isRun. And then if we click the play button, we should be able to check if our animations are working or not. One thing that we'll have to do before we do this is that we'll see when we go into play mode that the player, he just goes into his idle animation and then he stops. You can see that this idle is down here, and we can click on it, right? And then this blue line has gone all the way across. That means the animation has finished. And then this speed is 1, motion timer, mirror, cycle offset, foot, and white defaults. But what we'll want to do is get out of here, get out of play mode, and then we'll set the speed. We'll want to go into our project files, and then we'll want to find these two animations, the idle and the run animations that we both have. We can select both of these, and then what we'll want to do is set the loop time to true. And then once we do that, we can save this game up and then click play again. That means the animations will loop through. They weren't before, so the idle animation played once and then stopped. We want to keep these running, because if you keep on idling, then we want to play the animation over and over again. And you can see that right here, that he is idling, and now you can see that he is running, and now idling and running, and you can see that these animations look pretty good. That this game is looking much nicer now that we have these animations here. The run and the idle animations. There are a few more animations that we can do though. There is a jump animation, the jump and the fall, but these are just sprites. So what we can do into here is we can create a new animation. So if we go into the jump, right click, create animation, and then we'll just have one sprite right here, this jump. If this new animation, we can just know that's the jump. Drag this onto the player, and then if we go into the player, we'll see this. If we go into the new animation, we can play it, and then it doesn't show anything. So what we'll have to do for this is we'll have to drag in this jump sprite, right? So now it looks like he's jumping. And then we can drag in this fall sprite, right? And now it looks like he's jumping and then falling. But what we can do is what we can do here is we can have this animation play that he's just jumping, and then the fall animation will play after a little while. So if we add another fall animation, you'll see he'll jump, then fall, and jump, then fall. So here's the first. This will start out as jumping, then he starts falling right here, and this is when he ends the fall. So we can move this around to here or something. So he like jumps for longer, then falls, and if we go to here, he can go to here, and then it looks like he has this. And then that looks pretty good. But what if I actually only want one? I think for my game, I'll just keep it as just him in this position, as this jumping position. So what I can do is go into the animator, and then there is this new animation right now. And then we know that this new animation is jumping. So if we drag this out, it's just a little bit bigger now, so that we can easily make these use this. What we'll do is we can add transitions between idle, run, and the new animation, or the jump. So what we can do is add a new parameter. We'll add another bool, and we can name this isJump. And then what we'll do is from idle, we'll make a transition to new animation. Inside here, we're going to go open settings, turn off the exit time and transition duration, and then turn off has exit time. And then from idle to jump, we'll set isIdle to false, and we'll set isJump to true. We can do that from the same to jump to idle. We can right click on jump, make transition, back to idle. On this, we will turn off the transition duration, turn off the exit time, and then inside here, from jump to idle, isIdle to true, and then we'll set isJump to false. And now we'll have to do the same exact thing for running. We can right click on run, make transition to the jumping, and here we'll turn off exit time, transition duration, and then turn off has exit time. From running to jumping, we'll turn isRun is equal to false, and then isJump is equal to true. From jumping back to running, what we can do here, turn off transition duration, turn off has exit time, and then from jumping, we'll set isJump to be equal to false, and then isRun equal to true. So now, we have all of this set up, and we'll just have to go back into our script, and then we will add this in our animate. So right now we have this if statement, that's if the rigid body, if you're not moving, then we run. If you're not moving, then idle, and if you're moving, then run. But what we can do is what we'll do is if is grounded, we'll check if is grounded, but instead of just regular is grounded, we'll check if not is grounded. So if you're not on the ground, we'll check this right here. So if you're not on the ground, we'll set the animator dot set bool, and then we'll set isJump to true. Because if you're not on the ground, then you're obviously jumping. And then we'll want to set isJump to true. And then we will set isIdle to false. So we'll go to the animator dot set bool, and then is idle. We'll set this to false. And then we will also set is running to false. So we can go to the animator again, set bool again, and then this time we'll do is run. We'll set this to false. And then inside of both running and idling, we can just do the animator dot set bool, and then is jump. We'll set this to false, because if you're idling or running, you won't be jumping. And then we'll do the same exact line of code inside of the moving. So animator.setBool is jumping, or is just jump. We'll set this to false. Then you see that we have all of this, and this is all just checking that if we're moving or jumping or running or not moving at all, we will set the correct animations on the correct times. So if we go back into our Unity editor, and once it compiles, we shall play and check that if our running animation, jumping animation, and idling animation all play. One thing that we'll have to do though before we start is inside of this jump animation, we'll set loop time to true, because if you're still jumping, then we'll want to still play the jump animation. So we'll click play and then wait for this Unity editor to compile, and then we can see that our animations should have worked, and then that we can run, jump, and idle, and that they will all be shown as the player run, jumps, and idle. So right now you can see that he's idling. If we jump, we'll play the jump animation, idling, jump, running, jumping, idling, running, and then I think that looks like a pretty good game. So you can see that the player is running, and here's the running animation. Idling, he has the idling animation, and then jumping, he has the jumping animation. If he's moving while jumping, he has the jumping animation, and then if he's not moving while jumping, he still just has the jump animation. Thank you for following along through this tutorial, and I hope you follow along for the next tutorial. If you like this tutorial, please consider giving us a like and a subscribe, because it helps this channel grow and create more tutorials. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below, and we will get back to you as fast as possible. Thank you.